Welcome to A Different Kind of Doula. I'm here with my colleague, Colleen Hughes, and I'm Kathleen Putnam, and Maureen Cures could not be here with us today. And before I get started, we just want to express our gratitude for this opportunity to be here and share information and share others' wisdom by inviting them to our show. I know I've learned a lot. And what we've decided to do is to put the show on pause. And so we're going to take a pause and regroup so that we can actually really evaluate what's useful, what's helpful, and to take a break. So we're really grateful. And this last show, do you want to add anything to that, Colleen?
Yeah, I think we said about 6 months, and
Yeah.
we'll return after that with some fresh ideas.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. So today we decided to make this a meaningful conversation about what we've learned as end-of-life doulas. We both started this path relatively close to one another. I had been to a training and decided to take another training, and we were in the same class. And right after that training, it was at the very beginning of 2019. Uh, then it went into, or it was the beginning of 2020 because we came back and within 2 months, COVID was isolating us and a lot started happening. So what I want to do is just ask you, Colleen, what's at the top of your mind about what you've learned since we met then?
It's interesting because just before the show, I saw a client and I was reviewing a vigil plan. It was about 8 pages long,
Mhm.
and um, she initially, when she started out, she initially says, "Well, these are things I've thought of, da 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 da," but kind of like, "Yeah, this is nice, but I really thought of it." But boy, once we started getting into details about things, I learned a lot.
Mhm.
Um, I just learned that sometimes you'll pick a method, like for her, it was voluntary stopping eating and drinking, but now she's very, very concerned about her pulmonary condition. And will that really, will VSED make it worse, or
Mm,
will she feel more comfortable with it? And here is where the doctor, her physician, a palliative care doctor, and even a hospice team would be really helpful in this planning and explaining that medical aspect to her, because I couldn't answer that. I know what VSED is, I know the steps, I know the process, I know the dying process, but do I really know her concerns were lung? And so I thought to myself as I walked out, I thought, I'll just always learning something. Um, I learned that when we started this, or when I started this, even as an RN with all my experience quotes, it's just experience and there's so much more to it. And so when I started out as an end of life doula, it was a lot more tenuous than it is now, and unsure of how people are, because your whole focus is different. It's about death and dying. It's not about tasks going in and out of a hospital room, or being a hospice nurse and having tasks, certain tasks, and only a certain amount of time.
sure.
It's really different. It's concentrated time.
Hmm.
So that's some of the biggest things. I'm always learning something new. It never stops. And also learning that I can't fix things. We've been
Hmm.
told that over and over again, even though sometimes I catch myself wanting to fix something. Well, maybe if I give them this, but I'm learning it's not always the best thing to do. It's never the best thing to do is to fix. I don't know. How about you?
Oh, I love all that because you're reminding me of a client who, when I first started working with her, who's terminal, and I'm still working, is that they knew what kind of spirituality, what they wanted that to look like, and what it currently looks like, and it has changed since
Mm,
I've worked with her. And so the importance of revisiting. those questions and updating a plan, especially when you have an expectation that it's going to go quicker and then it doesn't. Where do you want to put your energy and what now is most important to you? And I would say the other thing is I tend to do this my whole life. Think big, go far, open up your arms and say, "Oh yeah, let's do this." So I had this uh really a dream, and it's not gone away, of utilizing some property and a little cottage to be able to house people who want to be housed during the death and dying process. And it was kind of complicated. And then now I'm renting it for now, but still having that in the back of my mind and being patient, which is not my strong point. And then, but I still love the idea, and people are doing that. And then the other part is through our training, I absolutely, Colleen, loved those retired nurses who were doing after death care with the body. And I loved and cherished those stories. They were so moving about keeping the body in the home so that people had adequate time to mourn and be with that person. And just what beauty they brought to that process. And I learned so much about what you need to do with the body, etc. And I really had a dream of doing that work and being able to be there for people in this way, how different that would make my end of life experiences if that's what was done. And then really realizing that I don't want to do that alone. And we have another end of life doula who also wants to do it eventually, but right now she's working too much. Um, and so yeah, kind of putting off those things and then really stepping into coaching and grief coaching and education. And those are two things I've been doing almost all my career, and how wonderful they fit. Although I have the same lesson about not wanting to fix things. When you're a nurse, we're expecting to be fixed. When people come and see me,
Fixers.
yeah, and we get paid for that. And so now it's this thing that we know there's no fixing this. And what's really important is to bring down any unnecessary suffering, to be able to educate people, to bring down the fear, and then also to really help with coordinating, okay, coordinating palliative hospice care and medical care, because that takes a lot of energy, for someone. And yeah, I feel like still a bit of a first grader in this. And I like that. I like feeling like I'm just going to keep learning and growing. It brings my sense of a beginner's mind and curiosity, and so I just really like that. And I love our collective
Mhm.
because I love feeling supported. I love that self-care that somebody else can step up. Yeah.
I love how you went back in going back into the class where those two women showed how they take care of people after death and care of the body, which was so beautiful. I mean, it was unbelievably beautiful. I, I know that stuck with both of us in our minds of what the possibilities are. And do remember, I think it was something that really was quite poignant, where she actually helped young person who had died, and the teenage friends were in the room, and they helped them. Can you imagine being a teenager and viewing this process that they did with this young person? And so I think it's things like that. Every time I see someone do a special ritual or some kind of ceremony, or they share something, uh, it just uh, it 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 just says, "Oh wow!" It just gives you thinking big is not bad.
Mhm.
It's just that you just have to plan things too and work toward them. But being a doula is exciting because there's so many avenues that haven't roads that haven't been explored yet.
Mhm.
One of the things, and this might seem quite mundane to mention, but I really have learned, and a lot of this comes from when I teach this class of people who have a terminal illness. But I've also seen it recently with one client who was dying, and she was young. But it's that faith and courage of the individual. It does take a lot of courage. And then there's the dignity you want to make sure that they feel they have. And and then you get to view, even though some people are not going to admit this, the fear and the unknown. And the client I just saw recently, she talked about that fear, and that's why she doesn't want to die alone. But she also has a beautiful community that's going to support
Mm.
her when the time comes.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself about Alua Arthur recently. She did something on NPR. Uh, Alua Arthur is a doula, well known. She was an attorney to start with, and became profoundly depressed and took a trip and met a woman who had uterine cancer, and her life started to change. And then her brother-in-law was dying, and she was involved with him. And that's when she decided on she's going to be an end-of-life doula. And she has this business called Going with Grace. And what I loved about something she said, and it's about the fear and the unknown. I mean, people think just because you work with death, you're weird anyway,
Yeah.
right? And 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 they say, how can you ever do this? And your answer is, well, because it makes me feel more alive, more grateful, which are all true.
Mhm.
But then what Alua Arthur said, when I think it was the interviewer who said, do you ever have any fears over this, or how do you see your death? And she goes, oh, I know exactly what I want. I want this, and this. I want this person there. I don't, this is what I want for arrangements, etc. The kind of music, whatever, the flowers, everything down to a T. And then she said, but who knows
Mhm.
how it's going to be?
Right.
And she says, it looks like I'm at peace now, but what if I just go out kicking and screaming? And I thought that was great,
Right.
because that is honest. We
Mhm.
don't know. I hope,
Don't.
for myself, I don't go out. I hope I just let go. But I may have a lot of disappointment too. I don't know. Even though I thought, I think I worked through a lot, or I'm going to work through something. So we don't really know, but it's the intention. It's the intention of what you want it to be. So,
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I think we're in that position a lot of what's going to happen. And we can only know what we know and share, especially Barbara Carnes's work and what does death look like. She's been just a tremendous resource for us. When you were talking about we don't know, I think doing this work pushes different things in us, very much different than traditional education has for me. And what I'm knowing is what I'm living out is paying attention to the gaps that are there, that I know are there. And, real, and I talk to you about it all the time because we have very similar interests and beliefs in that way, is just how can I deepen this? How can I express it authentically? How can I be present? And so that's where the self-compassion work and the mindfulness has come up with extra training. And then I also, Colleen, and you know this about me, and feel free to say anything about this, but I know I make people uncomfortable in the field sometimes because I am drawn to the real difficult stuff, the stuff that I know is pushing me. And I'm grateful for people like Stephen Jenkinson. And I'm grateful that some states do some things and some states don't, which creates tension, and it's happening in all kinds of areas in our country right now. But to really be thoughtful and sit with this discomfort. And I'm really believing that the more you can sit from the discomfort, sit in discomfort without knowing, and knowing everything's going to keep changing. Yeah, trusting it and really getting to know myself so that I can be more present for others, but also someday I'm going to die.
Mhm.
And I am trusting that if I do some of this work and I'm actually implementing it in my life, because it's one thing to learn, it's another thing to actually do it. Um, and then it's kind of helped how I want to live. It is helping me with the conversations I want to have. It's helping me get clarity on some things. And so for that, I'm super grateful.
Yeah. And I just want to say something about you. You can do the hard things. I mean, you do not shy away from
Mm.
the conflicts and some of the questions people have and the push and the pull over certain things already in the dying industry that we have talked about on the show. And I mean, I think as a doula, I believe we're here to give people information. And it doesn't matter. We don't judge it. We keep ourselves out of it. But I always say when I walk away, there is some impact on me and
Yep.
it makes me think about the issues at hand. There's another thing that and reminding people I've learned, and I think every time you deal with someone who is dying, this gets more prominent in your life, is to remind people to tell people that you love them and care about them when you see them, because you don't know really when you're going to see them again or if you're ever going to see them again.
Right.
And recently I had two siblings in my family have a disagreement over thing and stop talking to each other.
Yeah.
And I said, no, they're really close and this is just temporary, but we can't afford this at our age, any of us. And so I talked to each one separately. And I just talked to them. One of my sisters has worked in the hospice industry and she totally gets it. The other sister, she has done volunteering and things. So she gets it too, but in a different way. But I said to my one sister, I just said, look, I said, we're older now and things are a little more fragile, than when we were younger.
Hmm.
Said, do you really want to go out and all of a sudden suddenly leave this planet and have this undone? And she thought about that very seriously and asked she asked for forgiveness first. She said, I think I was wrong, to the other sister. And the other
Oh.
sister accepted it and they both apologized. And I talked to my younger sister as well about this. I said, we're not younger. It's you never know what's going to happen, but you really don't want to leave anything undone. Now you want to learn how to let go of the disagreements and the anger or holding on to regrets, because that's what will happen if someone dies and there's something unfinished that you could have avoided.
Mhm.
So I just think those are hard things,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yep. I love that. I'm relating to what you're saying so much with being a secondary uh power of attorney for my mom, both for medical and for financial, and letting other people take the lead, but really be there to back them. And how important it is to have the tough conversations and to give leeway when my mom might not be ready, or to encourage her to at least make a decision and know that she can always come back and change her mind. And it really, when we start conversations, I'll say, what's most important to you? What do you want to do in the next month? What do you want to make happen? And she's taking these trips to see her grandkids. She is wanting to cut back on things and give things away and really not have so much clutter. And she's very healthy. I just want to say that too. But she's also decided what she wants to do most is get her family together. So we are in the process right now of planning a cruise together as a family, and no spouses and no kids, just the five of us. And you know how that is to try to plan a whole bunch of people to get to one place at one time. But I'm really appreciative right now to be reconnected, especially to my brother, who I don't see or talk to that much, and just be connected in this way to celebrate that mom wants to do this. And it's not a wedding, it's not a funeral, it's not a reunion, it is just us.
That's one regret I do have when you were talking about doing this trip with your mom, is that my mother always wanted to take a trip with me to New Orleans. And that's where she went to nursing school and everything.
Oh,
And we
yeah.
talked about it, but we never did it. And
Mm,
so every once in a while, I think about that and I said, oh, that would have been nice if I had just insisted and followed through with it. So I'm really glad to hear that. I mean, we learn from our regrets and
right.
we learn, you know, that we can share those with other people and how we felt. And hopefully they'll see some merit in the story and say, oh, maybe I will follow through with something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I love that, like my dad died 7 years ago. It's crazy that it's that long, and in April. And one thing that I feel that like I like thinking about is how to keep this person alive with me. And my dad was great traveling. My dad embraced it. He was a dentist, so work, I think, you just kind of go through your days or whatever. And like it didn't matter where I was going to school, Oregon, New Mexico, moving out to Seattle. He was always excited and always thought everything was great. And so he would come and he would identify things that I wasn't even noticing, and he'd be like, "This is so awesome over here." And one of the things all of us can remember is there was a dental convention, and he took all of us down to California and we went to Disneyland. And since my ex and I got divorced, I take my daughter to Disneyland. That's where she always wanted to go. And when I get there, I think about him and just pure joy and never complaining about being in line, just having fun. And he would throw up his arms and just say, "Woo hoo," and I have embraced that. I do it. I don't care if it's embarrassing. I don't care. I don't have to be on a ride, riding the ride. I just emulating, because it always reminded me we're having fun, even though there was five of us there trekking around and someone has to go to the bathroom. There's always stuff like that where you get interrupted with a bunch of kids, and just how easy that was for him. And that's what I want to carry forward. And I want to remind my daughter about his spirit that way.
Oh, wow. That is so beautiful. I mean, I feel that. And I think you are like him because you enjoy and embrace life, to the fullest. And you will start dancing in the middle of no music, nothing. I've seen it. And I think it's great. And in
Mhm.
fact, that's how the being around someone like you and other people that are like you always makes me feel lighter
Mhm.
and just more enjoying life more. So we need each other for those
Mhm.
kinds of things.
Absolutely.
Um, I think, as a doula, there are so many things at times, and I know you've honed down your practice with trauma and grief. But people do, I mean, some people may not realize that there's so much to being a doula. There are so many different hats, and there's so many different things from planning and organizing and life reviews and vigiling and advanced directives, doctor's appointments, with people to doctor's
Yeah.
appointments and being advocates. And are you have to ask yourself as a doula, am I going to participate, before death, during or an after, or all three areas?
Mhm.
And I think, am I going to do respite care? Um, what is it? What aspects? Because these are called the nuts and bolts of death and dying in our culture. And that is what I think we do best is let people know all of these nuts and bolts and then help them sort through it. It's kind of
Mhm.
like dumping things out on the floor and saying, okay, we're going to build your plan, end of life care plan. Where do you want to start? And of course, the doula kind of, helps navigate that person to based on what they want and what they need. But that's what I find so enjoyable about the work is the death education and all the support and planning and all the kinds of things and all the different people you meet, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yet I'm gonna give a shout out to you, with the vigiling and talking to people,
Mhm.
facing death and dying, and how, beautiful your stories have been about when you're called in. And sometimes we are going to be wearing all the hats of the doula because there's a relationship there. You know, there's a relationship there. It's important to know what you're not comfortable doing, what you're not available to do. And it's been interesting to me too, thinking, Colleen, that if I say that I'm not going to show up at a house or I'm not going to show up physically, people aren't going to want my services. And what's really interesting is they say, well, can you talk to me on Zoom and kind of coach me through this? And how open people are to that. And it sometimes is a relief because they're not sure if they're going to want people in their house, especially if there is a caregiver, in the house or hospice is coming in and out, and just trying not to disrupt, certain things that were happening. And I have found that really interesting. And I also love when you were just talking about having community. We went through the program and then we found each other and started meeting and starting having death cafes through COVID. And then we've evolved and just kind of learned where we're called and what people are asking for and wanting. And a lot of it is education and support and giving ideas. And I've really appreciated that when I'm in a situation and I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, you've been fantastic with the laws and what you're able to do and what you're not able to do to drive a body into the state of Washington for people to be able to compost, just things like that. Or just recently, Maureen saying that if it's death by suicide, it doesn't go on the death certificate. And life insurance still goes through. I hadn't even thought about that. That doesn't even cross my mind. So I'm just so appreciative because I keep learning from all of you, and you've all been such a resource when I've picked up the phone and I'm like, I really don't know what to do in this situation. What resources are available?
Let me clarify something. Death by medically assisted
Yeah.
dying, never goes on a death certificate,
Hmm.
period. And
Hmm.
that was something actually I had learned. Also, I had worried about that
Yeah.
because if it was suicide, then insurance companies are not likely to pay.
Right.
But before we check out on our last show for a while, there was this Gabby Jimenez and her colleagues in a recent book. No, it wasn't Gabby Jimenez. It was Diane Button in Dear Death. She has this doula's final checklist, and I love these questions. I actually gave this, and one of the participants in one of our shows asked me to send it to them because they liked it so much. And it was just very quickly, what worries you when you lying awake at night? What is left unsaid? What is left undone? What matters most? And who matters most? If
Mm.
you can answer those, you'll be taking care of a lot of things or looking for things that you haven't taken care of. This is a different kind of doula, and I'm here today with my co-host Kathleen Putnam, and Maureen couldn't join us for this last show for a while, so put it on pause. But we are part of the Gentle Passage Doula Collective. You can find us on gentlepassagedoulacollective.com. We have classes coming up. We have a virtual class, and in the fall, we will have an in-person class and the Death Cafe every month. So blessings to you all until we meet again.
Thank you.